your availability to join us. I have begun our recording for this afternoon so that we can share this webinar back out with those folks who register, but maybe were unable to attend. Sometimes our schedules prevent us from doing the thing in real time, but it's so great to see all of your faces. And thank you again for joining us on the second day of spring. It is the last of our webinars in this 5-part series here at the Belk Center. Thank you for joining us. I am lucky enough to be joined in this work by some amazing people today, and particularly want to acknowledge my colleague in this work, Dr. Chantel Strickland Davis, who is joining us from Central Piedmont Community College. She has been invested in this work with me since the beginning of the academic year, and she joins me as co-host. Part of the reason why we're doing this teaching and learning webinar series is because we know there are ways to talk about the strategic institutional things happening across North Carolina's community colleges that are building and sustaining a culture of teaching and learning for student success. And we have opportunities to share this in real time, like this webinar today. You also have opportunities to share it through the Student Success Conference that happens biannually and other avenues. And it's just really good to be able to think about the work that is happening centered in our state. We often have access to amazing national examples, and sometimes we also miss the opportunity to recognize those same things are being scaffolded and scaled and talked about intentionally with strategy, with resource, both personnel as well as fiscal resource. Creativity is a resource that are happening in this state. And so throughout November to now, we have gone from unpacking guiding principles for transformational change. We've talked about data literacy in this webinar series. We have talked about embedding practice and reflexive work through course development contracts or course development documents with our friends from Blue Ridge Community College. We've also talked about the statewide framework of teaching and learning excellence through the teaching and learning hubs. All in all, we have intentionally shared this space with colleagues from folks from Wilkes Community College, from Fayetteville Tech, from Blue Ridge, from Catawba Valley, from Central Piedmont, from Stanley, and today 3 of our colleagues that are joining us as well from Durham Tech and Rowan Cabarrus. And so it is an amazing time to really culminate the work that we have explored regarding the approaches, the strategies, the resources, and the scaffolded and scalable intent for supporting student success through teaching and learning initiatives for faculty and staff educators amongst the great 58 community colleges in this state. In today's webinar, we will explore the critical need for breaking down silos. We'll talk about underscoring the collaboration amongst the college, from academic affairs and student services, all webbed and woven together for the greatest student impact, those student outcomes and those metrics and markers that we are all so familiar with, both institutionally, but also from a system perspective. And so joining us today are 3 amazing people. Dr. Cabarrus, who's the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Durham Technical Community College. Our colleague, Mark Short, who is the Chief of Staff at Central Piedmont Community College, and our colleague, Natasha Lipscomb, who is the Vice President of Student Services at Rowan Cabarrus. And so I welcome them all to this discussion. I welcome all of you who are joining us right now, and also welcome all of you who will join us at a later date and watching. We're going to get started in this conversation, just talking about the intersection of students' academic journey, their personal life journey, and what it means to continue to break down the silos for student success. So our very first question is, at the intersection of a student's academic and personal journey, faculty and staff are called to be equipped to care for the whole student. Professional learning can serve as a catalyst for the cross-unit partnerships, the functions, the collaborations, and understanding how we demonstrate our commitment to student success. We as individuals, we as colleges. Can you share, our 3 guests, can you share with us some examples of impactful and meaningful professional learning initiatives that are happening at your college that drive your educators, your faculty, as well as your staff educators, confidence and efficacy in supporting the whole student? And because this is a discussion, there's no right, wrong way to jump in. So I'm gonna look to my colleague at Durham Tech if you would love to get us started in answering this question about how Durham Tech is building those spaces and ensuring that confidence.
Yes, so thank you for the introduction and good afternoon, everyone. So I think we would all agree that the last 3 years have cast a very bright light on the challenges that our students have been facing, and actually the challenges they were facing pre-pandemic, but the pandemic really brought those things to the surface. And so we have been very intentional about how we support them during their academic journey and their personal lives. They can't learn if we're not addressing all aspects of their needs. So our response at Durham Tech, in addition to the teaching and learning hubs that Monique mentioned and the work of the Student Success Center, we are intentional about supporting that whole student to make sure we're focusing on supporting all of our students' lives. So some of the professional development opportunities that we've been offering on campus to support this are things like mental health first aid for faculty and for staff. So we have a teaching and learning center on campus that is for employees. At one point, it was just focused on faculty development, but now it's focused on employee development. We've had series on accessibility services, so accommodation plans, working with students in the spectrum. We've had a series of teaching and learning opportunities that focus on multi-generational engagement in the classroom, and talking about the need for faculty to reflect their various perspectives in their classrooms to support students. We've talked about the influence of technology or the lack of technology that some of our students don't have, cultural awareness, explicit bias. We've done LGBTQ+ lunch and learns that are instructor-led and panels to talk about issues and opportunities to discuss the LGBTQ+ community and opportunities for allyship and advocacy on campus. We are hosting suicide prevention training soon in the later spring. And we provide a physical space for most of these trainings in our teaching and learning center, but we also have these things as an option on Teams. So just like we're recording this one for people who can't attend live in person, we also record those sessions so that employees who register can go back and watch at a time that's convenient to their schedule if they're not able to attend the live session. Some of the things we do to encourage people to attend is we provide a stipend to our adjuncts when they attend at least 2 of the scheduled sessions. So it's a $50 stipend. They just have to put the title, the date that they attended, and we verify the attendance. We also devote 2 days, 1 day, full day in May, 1 full day in August for teaching and learning professional development and the college that's actually on our academic calendar. And we don't close the college to the public, but we're very intentional about having those professional learning opportunities on days when there are no classes scheduled and instructors are done with grading exams so they can focus on those professional development days. So the first professional development day serves as the college convocation with opportunities in the afternoon for breakout sessions. The second professional development day, which is in May, is for all employees who teach and is designed to give faculty the opportunity to reflect on their teaching practice, refine their pedagogy, and ensure learning excellence. we've been discussing ways in which to support other ways to support our employees who want to attend, but their classes may conflict at the same time. So we've talked about hiring substitutes or getting a faculty member, someone else to cover their course if they want to attend something live, and been very intentional about providing time for people to get together and have discussions about what they've learned and how they implement those new strategies. Because a lot of times we're able to offer the professional development, but we don't carve out time for people to then implement it back and talk about what they've implemented. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing at Durham Tech, in addition to the statewide teaching and learning hubs, in addition to the Success Center, North Carolina Student Success Center, and other opportunities for professional learning. I hate to use the word opportunities again, but webinars and training.
Yeah, definitely understand. And I really like you said the very portion of your remarks, allyship and advocacy. And it really does center what this work, what this collaboration across the college is about. It's about allyship and advocacy so that students, adult learners, dual enrolled students can see themselves across the college, know the investment that the college is making in their success through faculty, through staff educators, through advisors, through all the folks that have touch points as a student considers, makes a decision, enrolls, persists, and then completes. And I think, yeah, that trajectory is really critical. Mark, I'd love to hear from you how CPC is actionalizing this thing, how it's making this investment very clear to faculty, staff, and students. You're a little low. Maybe we can adjust your volume just a little bit. I know you're unmuted. While you're adjusting that, I'm going to jump to Natasha. And Mark, I know when you can join us, you just unplug yourself or unmute yourself, and we'll be able to hear you just good. Thank you. Natasha, how about you and what's happening on your campus at Rowan Cabarrus?
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me okay? I started checking my levels. Mark, I feel you.
Yes.
Over there. We'll hear from you soon. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of the discussion and for framing the discussion so well. Before I jumped on, I went back and read the invitation and sort of what your goals were for the discussion today. And it is spot on and what we need to be talking about. I want to appreciate the comments of Dr. Carol Battle. You guys are doing a lot of amazing things, and I was jotting down a few ideas as I was listening to what you all are doing. At Rowan Cabarrus, we are also very much interested in this connection, making sure that everyone feels, F-I-L-L-S, and also feels that their role is important as an educator. I love the way you distinguished staff educators. That will in itself, our language is so important. That will in itself, if we begin to refer to us all as having the responsibility of acknowledging our funds of knowledge, like we don't have, learning doesn't look just one way, and our students aren't going to receive it only in a classroom setting, whether that be virtually or physically in a classroom. So I want to say how important framing that is. And we try and do a bit of that on our campus and our college as well. I want to talk about the language because that's one of the ways that we've done that. So a lot of good things have come out of pedagogical frameworks. And we sometimes don't reach back to learn those lessons and to bring them forward. And so we've been doing a lot around culturally responsive practices. And our culturally responsive practices come out of the pedagogical work of Gloria Latson Billings and Geneva Gay. I see you nodding there, Dr. Battle. It's of course, all of the areas we were talking about that help break down silos on our campuses. So whether it's socioeconomic or, racialized, minoritized groups, or LGBTQ plus, as Dr. Battle mentioned, and differently abled populations. And so when we use a framework like that, we begin to have our language to mirror each other, and we feel more inclusive in our conversations. One of the things about culturally responsive teaching and practices is that its goal is to empower. Its goal is to empower what we bring into the spaces we're in, to make sure that it is valued and that we have a space emotionally, socially, intellectually. And so we've tried to do that among our faculty and our staff by encouraging the culturally responsive practices in the classroom and outside. So just wanted to say how important it is to have the same language and a framework that sort of leads. We have been using the American Association of Community Colleges Instructional Technology Council materials. So the ITC has a really good online module-based DEIH is they're focusing on the humanization piece, and it is geared toward faculty, though we are using it for other groups on campus, including students taking parts of those modules. It's geared toward faculty and toward online instructional design and delivery. But it is translatable to other areas as well. And it breaks it down where you don't have to spend too much time all at one time. And we found that to be a good starting place for us as well. The only other thing I'll say right now is about your question is around success markers. Again, for me, it's all about the language. And so we're working on this, but we're trying to use success markers. You were talking about, first year experience, persistence, completion. We're trying to use the success markers for the students and asking for our faculty and staff to help us define those as they are empowered to help us create the student success markers, points at which we know students will feel more confident to move forward, that they will help contribute even more to making sure students meet those success markers. So instead of calling it, you're on academic probation, you didn't meet the success marker of moving forward, so how can we meet these success markers and not use the deficit language as much?
That's really important because we know that language is an invitation as to whether or not a student currently or a potential student sees themselves in the space. So how can we talk about supporting faculty and staff in driving their preparedness, their continued awareness to support the student if the language is mismatched on the beginning? So I love the fact that you've talked about this framework. We'll definitely, as we prepare to send out this recording, we can find the connection to the DEIH. We'll also share that link out so that folks have an opportunity to see the resources that you're referencing. Mark, are you ready to join us? Oh no, I cannot hear you. I'm so sad. I know that it's going to work because I know having the power of 3 folks from different areas across the colleges, academic affairs, student services, and the chief of staff being the umbrella for all of this work around student success and preparing and further supporting our faculty and our staff educators. I am confident that we are going to get your volume perfect at this point.
Monique, can we, perhaps Mark, can you try call?
Well, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And that's all it took, the magic. Thank you.
You spoke it and it came. So thank you, Monique. You have that magic power. And once again, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to sit on the same panel with Dr. Battle and Natasha. And hard to follow both of those lovely ladies with what they said. I love the intentionality piece, Dr. Battle, and love the language piece, Natasha. I think this is very critical. I'll bring a slightly different perspective to kind of maybe have a holistic view for everyone. I'll come more from kind of the structure and what we're doing to we set up as a college to support our faculty and staff. I think it's very critical. As Dr. Battle said, we came out of a period with the pandemic of, it was quite uncertain. And, for us, we created or tried to strive to create a culture of care for both our students and for our faculty and staff. And we talked a lot about mental health. We put a lot of great focus on mental health, a lot of flexibility, right, with both employees and with the students. As we all were learning something new. So if you didn't have that growth mindset during that period, boy, you were in a heap of trouble. So we came through it though, and we want to be very intentional as far as how we were set up as an institution to support our faculty and staff from a development perspective. So it's imperative that you have leadership commitment, both from being able to support the professional development for faculty and staff, but also providing the time. You mentioned some symposiums, some webinars. You have to have your line management, your institutional leadership that will support employees being away from their day jobs, if you will, so that they can develop themselves. I spent 25 years in the corporate world, so I'm not an distinguished educator like my other two colleagues, but also we had an old saying in development. And the only thing worse than developing your people and having them leave was not developing your people and having them stay. And that is so true. And really the heart of that is around recruiting and retention of your employees. And you have to invest in your employees, both faculty and staff. Obviously, faculty is front-facing, student affairs as well. So you have to invest in those people. And there's all sorts of research that proves that development drives engagement. And the more engaged your employees are, the greater success you're going to have. And we're all in the business of student success. So one would think that the more we develop our employees, the greater engaged they're going to be in day-to-day, and we should have better results. So not only do you need to have leadership involvement, you need to have intentionality. And what I mean by that is, what's your North Star with your development? It shouldn't be haphazard. When I first got here about 4.5 years ago, we had mandatory 20 hours of professional development. And we still have that today for faculty, but it's very intentional. It used to be, it didn't matter what the 20 hours were, just have 20 hours. You could go read a book, whatever it may be. But be intentional. I would rather that you spend a good 8 to 10 hours with something intentional that's really going to move the needle for you than to have 20 hours. So be very intentional. And the way we did that is we developed competencies for our leaders and our faculty and our staff. So we have competency models for that. And they're centered on our values and our mission. We have 6 values here at the Central Piedmont. Every offering that we do, every webinar, every seminar, every speaker, every class that we offer is assigned or attached or aligned with a competency. So we're having that consistency as far as we're very intentional with what we're going to do around the development. And then third, what I say is, how are you set up from an organizational standpoint? Central Piedmont, we're a big college. We get that. We have 6 campuses, 2 centers. We're very blessed and very fortunate there. So we have a group of about 15 to 17 that are in our development group. And that's not only our Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence, but also talent development. So we have dedicated resources to that they can focus on employees. So some examples of what we're doing is we've just revamped our new employee orientation, because recruiting and retention starts in the onboarding process with new employees. We used to do just a very quick 4-hour, half-day new employee orientation, and then you're on your way. And we found out, being a large and complex organization and institution, is that we need to dive deeper down in with our employees to foster that relationship. So we're developing cohorts. We're assigning them a talent navigator, if you will, that will help them with their career as far as their development. But we use an individual development plan here. Everyone's required to go to have an individual development plan and share that with their leader, and go through that. And they're also required that they meet on a regular basis to discuss that individual development plan. So you think about forward thinking. A lot of performance management is looking in the rearview mirror, right? How did I perform in the past? With IDPs, our philosophy is we need to build for the future. So how do we need to develop you to make you better, and to where we can meet our needs as well as student success. So these talent navigators help all employees with their IDPs. But also what's important in the new employee orientation that we call ONE, which is onboarding new employees, which kind of goes with, we have a big one college model because we have multiple campuses. So one college ball is very important to us. But it's a 4-day event over 4 months. So no longer 4 hours, it's a 4-day event over 4 months. And we end that, and this is a critical piece, let's come back to that culture of care and why we're all here. We go deep dive into our why. So Dr. Biedermeyer, our president, is there, all of cabinet is there, so we're there for that 4 hours on that day. And we discuss our why do we work here, what's our purpose, how does our personal why align with the purpose and mission of the college. And then we have our new employees go through an exercise where they brainstorm and they do their why as well. So that's that connectivity. Once again, is showing that we care about them and about them as a holistic individual and their why. Because if you can align their why with the purpose of the college or the institution, you're going to have better results, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is that in that we have foundational topics within our new employee orientation, then we have tracks. So if you're a leader and you're a new employee leader, after you go through the foundational pieces that are in our new employee orientation, there's also one for new leaders, there's also one for new faculty, and also one for new staff. So you have 3 different tracks where these people are going to go. Some examples are for faculty, as we mentioned, we have the dedicated teaching center. Annual symposiums, so much like Dr. Battle and Natasha were annual symposiums, speakers, that sort of thing. We do a lot of workshops in collaboration with student affairs and academic affairs to ensure there's alignment. Because, like I say, if you're looking at that student-facing piece, those 2 groups are the main ones there. We do peer observations for our faculty. And that comes out of our Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence, so that you can learn from each other. It's not a, there's sometimes can be a little bit of intimidation if it's your manager or boss, right? So we're doing peer observations so that they can learn from each other. That's what development for both roles, right? Both the person doing the observation and the person who's in the classroom. Both people typically learn from that. Then we have those dedicated resources. Not only do we have the center dedicated to faculty, we have a dedicated group around talent development just for your staff. Then we have a dedicated group of 3 people that focus on nothing but technology training. As we know, technology is just a big thing, especially from online. So I think having those dedicated resources are very critical. So, I'm coming more from the approach of how are we set up from a structure perspective and from a philosophy standpoint and then intentionality. But I think if you do all those things, it shows the employees that you really care about them. And if you show that you care for your employees and you're willing to invest in their development, odds are they're going to invest more into their students, and that's why we're really good.
Thank you so much. As you all were talking, there are four words that came to mind that I think are a great bridge to where you actually started to lead us, Mark, which is the second question. But the 4 words that came to mind for me were leadership, intentionality, purposeful, and alignment. And it seems to be the collective body of those words really summarizes how important this work is, how important the structure for collaboration across college, across the leadership vision for the college, across the strategy for the college. And you kind of tipped our hand to the second question a little bit, which is around the strategies for communication. What strategies or professional learning opportunities have you all implemented at your college to create the shared space so that, as you said, Mark, folks don't just keep it to themselves, but they come back and they share, they communicate, they figure out where are some new partnerships. If some partnerships are not new, but just need to be resurrected a little bit, where do we instill kind of new energy in that work so that faculty, staff, educators across all disciplines, educators across all offices or home bases are connected for the good of the college, for the good of student success, for the good of the student outcomes. So I would love to get your all's feedback or thoughts around what strategies you all do to engage that, to make that an expectation, a requirement. And also at the same time, as you all are thinking about that, I definitely want to invite our folks who are joining us to drop your questions in the chat. Or if you have a real-time question and you're brave and you want to raise your virtual hand and unmute yourself, we welcome you also to share your question or share your own feedback about how your college is approaching this. Natasha, would you like to take a stab at this question next?
Yes, thank you. I will certainly put something out there and allow my colleagues to add to and help us along in the discussion. One of the strategies for bringing to light, I think that's really what I'm hearing in your question. How do we bring to light what might be offered from colleagues across the college? And then when they see it, they gravitate toward it, others gravitate toward it and say, hey, I have a partnership opportunity here and we need to connect. Sometimes forced partnerships feel like they're not as authentic, right? And so then it feels like a chore to keep that thing going. And you have these initiatives, we all have heard of initiative fatigue. So we have an initiative because someone on the outside saw a way that 2 or 3 areas could partner and they sort of forced it through their authority. So one of the ways we're doing that here at Rowan Cabarrus, allowing these organic, authentic partnerships to surface. Of course, we need to lead and we need to encourage those connections. But we are doing a lot of co-teaching around here. I mean, we're doing a lot of sharing out, allowing your not so traditional folks to be leaders of task forces and trying to make sure that we are highlighting those things that our employees bring about as assets. Just this past week, I had an opportunity to speak with a group, the North Carolina Community College Leadership Program alumni group, and we talked about activating all assets. We talked about how you have these hidden gems and treasures among the gifts in your faculty and staff. How do you elevate those things, make them comfortable in being able to offer what they have, and then encouraging the authentic gravitation toward that for partnerships. And so we do that through of course, our SharePoint internal website. We have a weekly email that goes out highlighting and celebrating. Celebrate is one of our words, celebrating the accomplishments of our faculty and staff. Many of them are international and national award winners in their areas. But then there are folks who have accomplishments that are connected to our local community, where we didn't know that our navigator at the front desk has a botany degree and loves plants, and wants to share some things. And then that turns into something for our students in our biology department that nobody knew was a connection. So just, I think, creating an environment where everybody can learn from each other, doing it in a structured way, but also a very open way, and then not shutting down the ideas that may seem far-fetched that came out of an organic, authentic space, I think is a way that we have done that, in a way that as leaders and cabinet members for Dr. Spalding here have been able to bring to her new ideas out of those partnerships that sort of were ground up, level up.
There's this point in whenever I'm in an opportunity to learn from folks, I always ask them, if you had like Spielberg budget or Marvel budget and there were no parameters, what would you do? But giving them a finite sense, you've got 12 months, you may have 2 more semesters, but what would you do? And I think that question is super connected to your last statement regarding not shutting down things that come out of the organic spaces where you're asking people for their thoughts about additional investments, additional ideas, because sometimes those spaces where we are not as inhibited, where we just are really spitballing with each other, they can create some really nice magic. And it's just a matter of seeing that little smolder start and continue to the fruition of what is the thing. So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Battle, what would you add around how does your campus celebrate success, employee success, or even just building on the initial question itself?
So I love what Natasha said about activating all assets. I typed that down and jotted it in my notes, and the kind of grassroots, organic, allowing those relationships to pop up where they may, not necessarily being as intentional. So and where people have experiences, letting them share what they're excited about that we may not even know. So I love that. So as I mentioned, we have this dedicated space on campus where people can share their knowledge. In the past, we've done scholarship of teaching and learning and supported our faculty. We've done faculty interest groups, FIGs, where faculty, based on just all being interested in the same thing, they may come from different areas of the college, and they actually ended up not just being faculty, they were employees of the college. So they might have been advisors, they might have been faculty together working on a class that was deciding to try something different. And so, bringing people together that way. So we hope to bring those back. Another thing that we do here at Durham Tech is we have a partnership with Duke University with Humanities Unbounded. So there's some Mellon grant funding that allows a faculty member to have a release time on a topic that they're interested in, provides graduate students to help with their classroom portion, and supports them while they step away from the classroom. So one of our deans for creative and liberal arts reached out and created that partnership with Duke University that we've been in probably for about 5 years now. My office, and I can't take credit for this, but the previous chief academic officer had these challenge coins made for Durham Tech. And so every semester, the deans nominate people to get those challenge coins that we go around and highlight something that they've done that faculty and staff are especially proud of. We celebrate them with marketing, do a little story on them, and I hand out the coin that they then keep that was made specially just for that purpose. The last thing I think I'll mention that we do is, we value what we value, we talk about, and we support financially. And so we support student success, and it's very obvious in our strategic plan. So everything that we do connects back to our strategic plan. So we have one part of our strategic plan is this pathway to institutional excellence. There are 4 different pathways, and there are 2 strategies specifically in the strategic plan that I think support faculty. So one is about promoting employee excellence and retention by investing in our full-time and part-time employees, ensuring that they have the support they need to exceed expectations identified in our college's core values. And then the second strategy was making sure that we create the teaching and learning space needed to help prepare our students for the future of work. So that's things like renovating classrooms, supporting our instructors, making sure the labs are up to date, having, state-of-the-art technology, and supporting the infrastructure. So we're real intentional about recruiting people and letting them know that we value teaching and learning and student success, and that we have these success metrics, the same success metrics everyone has: persistence, completion, transfer, first semester completion of a certain number of credit hours that we're using to measure our investment in student success. So just a few ways that we're doing some things to show that we are, supporting our employees as they support our strategic plan around student success.
It all goes back to that intentionality, the leadership, intentionality, purposeful alignment. It literally all circles back to that and how that is displayed. How, at CPCC, Mark, how do you think that folks on your campus see the investment being a direct impact to student success? Investment in faculty, investment in staff, investment from an umbrella perspective about all of the inner workings of the college to get to those metrics and markers that we know are, we have to report out to the system office, but then also the things that gives us those points of pride that we may share in anecdotal ways as well.
You know, it's first of all hard to follow my two colleagues. Again, I'm glad this thing's being recorded. Not that I can go back and look at myself, but I can go back and look at their answers because I wrote down some good points for me. And I love the challenge coin, Dr. Battle. I grew up in a military family that's quite big in military things. And so I love that challenge. And I know Chantel took a note, so that may be something we borrow very politely from you all. But I think it's critical that, you know, the old saying, what gets measured gets results, right? And but we shouldn't just focus on the metrics. It's very easy to get heads down and focus on the results. And one of my favorite quotes is, you know, don't judge your day by the harvest you reap, but judge it by the seeds you plant. And I think that's very critical for us, that is each interaction we have with the student, right, is an opportunity to plant a seed. And same thing with an employee. So each interaction we have with each other as teammates is an opportunity to plant a seed. If you have that growth mindset, that's a great opportunity. But for me, in Central Piedmont, I think it all begins with culture. You know, and for us, if you have a command and control culture, you're not going to hear the voices of your employees. If it's a top-down, that only the leaders are the brightest in the room. My dad was in the military. I tried to skip high school one day. He called me, made me go with him to a meeting, and he happened to be a lieutenant at the time. And when they were vetting an issue, he started with the lowest ranking person in the room and went around asking for perspective. And on the ride home, I said, besides Bill making that he maybe missed my senior skip day, I was like, why did you do that? And he goes, in the military, it's all about rank. So if a higher ranking person speaks, the others are not. So it's critical that if you want your voices, you start with them first. And so I think it's critical for all of us that we create a culture where every voice matters. Every voice is important, and all perspectives need to be embraced. If you have that type of culture, you will naturally hear from everyone. And we're far from perfect, but that's what we're trying to embed here, is that type of culture where every voice matters and every voice is of equal importance. I just went to our college staff a meeting this morning. That's of our non-exempt employees, if you want to think about that. We have roughly 160 of those at our college. And just hearing about their concerns and what's going well for them and what can we do from a cabinet perspective to help better support them. So I think it's critical that as leaders of a college, you put yourself out there and listen, right? And like I say, you show the importance of the voices of all employees and all students, right? There's ways to collect that information. And then, like I said before, we're striving for one college model having multiple campuses. And it's critical that you listen and that you provide the same services at all colleges, maybe all campuses, and that we're providing the same services there. But that's all geared around, as Dr. Battle said, it's all around your mission, your purpose, your strategy. We just had a strategy refresh where Dr. Clark on our team, who leads our strategy, went out and had focus groups at all campuses where all employees could come and also students could come. And they could provide a perspective on what do we need to do to refresh our strategy. So that voice is very critical. So besides starting with your culture, I think it's very important that you provide opportunities. So besides those sort of opportunities to provide feedback, you know, our president, which I'm sure other presidents do the same thing, is they have like dialogues and open forums, so when they meet with students and with employees, and Dr. B she calls them dialogues with Dr. B. We just had those a couple of weeks ago. And you get a lot of great information from this. I think it's critical to provide employees and students the opportunity to provide feedback. And then from a grassroots perspective, we have what we call learning communities, where any group of employees could come about and say, hey, can we create a learning community? It could be a book club, it could be on whatever topic, it could be an affinity group, some people call them the resource groups, in the corporate world, that's what we call them. It could be around anything. What we try to do is have some intentionality once again with those groups, and we give them a charge, a goal, to where they work on through the year and we report out. Then from our faculty side, in our Center for Teaching and Learning Nexus, we have Learning Commons. So that's more faculty driven, where some things, some topics that are important to faculty. So those are very, they're not leaders of an institution that are reading those. Those are peers, colleagues in those classifications of employees who are doing that themselves. And I think that's very critical. Once again, your voice matters, so I think you need to create those opportunities, but also the space, right? The physical space for that. And I think we've done that with our Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. The space is very collaborative, it drives collaboration where faculty can show up Another way where we hear some voices, you have your regular type of positions. We have, as I had mentioned, several employees who are assigned to our Center for Teaching, Learning, and Excellence, but we also have faculty fellows. So this is where people are coming out of the faculty that they're serving for us. They're not members of the team, but they kind of serve as an ad hoc member of the team. And we're also doing the same thing on the employee development side, where we call those talent ambassadors. So these are people out of the line of business who are volunteering somewhere to come work with us. So it helps them from a development perspective, but also gets we're closer to the client, if you want to use that terminology, when you're doing those type of things. So I think it's very important to do that. And then, we're very blessed. We have this new PAR Center. It's just a huge building, and it was designed for collaboration in open space. And while it was built for students, I can guarantee you that every day you'll see this migration of employees who just seem to have to gravitate that way because they have so many great collaborative open spaces for people that are meeting. So I think it's important to have, from a philosophy standpoint, having the culture set right, where you embrace that, where every voice matters, then providing some space and some opportunity for that, to do that. And then Dave mentioned employee success and celebrations. You have to do that. We have to reward and recognize our employees for their achievements. We do that for our students, right? So we got to do it for our employees as well. And one thing, you want to reward good behavior, so to speak, right? So if you want to model that behavior, we have multiple type of awards around excellence and performance, but we also have our value awards, which I take great heart in that, because it's our 6 values. All these are nominated from the peers. You have a committee who blindly, they do not know the name, they just look at what was presented and they choose that. But that's reinforcing that our values are very important to us, and we reinforce that behavior of living our values by recognizing those who are good models in that. So I think it's very important that you recognize and celebrate.
So we've got 3 new ones: the importance of culture, space, and celebration. That they've been added to my originals, which were leadership, intentionality, purposeful, and alignment. So we'll see where we end up before this conversation ends this afternoon. But this has been really helpful and amazing, I think, for us to hear and to share across. And the simple fact that this 1 hour conversation is modeling what each of you has said happens on your campus. The fact that now someone else is interested in challenge coins, who knows when or where the space would have existed for you to learn about that, to be able to say, you know what, let me look into challenge coins and let me look into this particular element and design around talent development and onboarding and retention of faculty and staff, and the specs around that not being rushed in the first few days, but it be something that can happen over the course of 4 months. This is the example of the thing that we're talking about that we do inter-college, and that's the beauty of being able to have 58 community colleges and have this space where we're sharing across those colleges. We have about 10 minutes left, and so I just want to provide everyone, not just our 3 guests from Durham Tech and Rowan, Cabarrus, and CPCC, but everyone who's on this call, if you have a thought that you want to share around our final question, you're welcome to drop it in the chat. You're also welcome to raise your hand, your virtual hand, and unmute yourself. But on your particular campus and your particular college, how do you inform students about the ways that faculty, staff, and administrators are encouraged to support their success? How do students know we're doing this work behind the scenes? Do we tell them? Is it something that we just assume they know? In the K-12 system, folks kind of know to expect that there are teacher work days, that for some reason or another, the high school is closed down and there has to be some alternate scheduling thing that happens. That doesn't end. I think if anyone read, I think it was last week, one of the governor's latest releases, it was around building professional development for K-12 teachers. Love to say somewhere soon, maybe that will be something that comes from that perspective around community college faculty and staff educators, or university faculty and staff educators. And not saying that we want to have the hands in all the pots, but We know there's intentionality when there's a culture. And that's the thing that we have heard throughout today's conversation is the culture of teaching and learning for student success is super important. So if anyone would like to share, how do your students know that this work is happening and that we are working amongst ourselves in the college to support them? How do they know that? How is it shown to them?
I'll jump in here, Monique, if okay. I am looking at these themes that are emerging from our conversation that you're reminding us of, and I think it's found in those the intentionality piece for certain, the space piece for certain. So we have faculty that were finalists for the Bellwether Award, and a big banner gets popped up in the health programs building about that, and students get to celebrate, one of our words, celebrate what's happening with our faculty. And then we put that faculty person, Dr. Fink, in a position where she can answer questions about her experience with this award. And it models for our students the ongoing learning that's happening among our employees. And it also helps them to understand that we're all still working, toward that. And she didn't win the award. And then that's important too, right? For us to follow up and make sure our students know about that process, and they're even more interested in how they might be able to support in the future. We were talking about listening sessions earlier. And so I'm a fairly new, at least I keep that in my back pocket. I can pull it. I'm a fairly new vice president now. I've been in education for 24 years, but I've only been a vice president since 2019. And the pandemic taught me a lot in my first few years. I feel like that's a different kind of a training ground, Mark. I had the 4-month thing, but and I immediately said that I did not want to do this job without hearing from students. And you talked about focus groups and you talked about all these ways, but I've been doing a VP listening session each semester with our students, and they shock me with something every time. I think I'm going to go in and I sit on my hands and I tell them I'm really going to listen, and I might have to follow up with you all on something if there's something I want to respond to, but I'm going to listen. I'm not going to respond with the answer. But let me tell you about one I had today, even right before I came on here. In this listening session, these students were telling me about their faculty. So you were asking, how do you know that students are informed? They are so in touch, and this is good news about faculty sharing vulnerably parts of their lives. The students were supposed to be in there telling me things to advocate for themselves, and they were saying, they were making comments that I wanted to take them with me in a couple of weeks to Raleigh, right? And put them in front of legislators for our faculty and staff and advocating for increase in salaries. I mean, so these students are very well connected to our faculty. We can certainly be intentional again in our spaces and in how we share with them to celebrate what's happening at our college and how committed we are to the purpose, right? I'm using all of our themes, but I do want to assure and say on behalf of students, many of which I just came from, I'm on my 4th listening session, I've got 2 more to go, but they are so well versed on what's happening at the college, and I'm so proud of their connection. And I believe that's because we're doing that culture thing, Mark. We're really creating space for their voice to be heard, and when they use their voice, don't be surprised that they don't use it on themselves all the time. They were advocating for the mental health of their teachers. And I was very proud to hear that.
That is a beautiful example. Thank you for sharing that.
So I'll just add a little bit. We do our website, our marketing and communications department has started highlighting a employee every few weeks. So there's a banner, there's, the person is shown in their space doing what they do, whether that's a faculty person or a dean or employee working with a student and advising, and they tell kind of their story, not just what they do here at Durham Tech, but kind of what kinds of things are they interested in outside of work? What does their family look like? And so students learn about what faculty and employees are doing that support the mission and values of the college, but how are they as a whole person also? And one other thing I'll mention, because Natasha reminded me of this, students are a lot of times sending unsolicited emails to the president, to myself, about their instructors or about their interaction with a staff person on campus. You know, sometimes we think we only get those things when they're negative, but when they have great interactions, they send things also. I had a dean's meeting yesterday, and I was just highlighting, as you mentioned, Mark and Natasha, about our employees are doing some amazing things, not just at the local level, but nationally, statewide, and how, you know, I just wasn't aware in other roles that I served at the college at the level of touch that we have nationwide, and the things that our employees are doing and sharing with other people. And so, you know, I think on all of our campuses, there are some amazing people who are dedicated to this work, who it just comes out naturally and organically. And our students know about it because they're talking about it. And I think that's the best compliment that they can give us, when they talk about it and share it.
Absolutely, indeed. Mark, I noticed you had something too.
Well, I could listen to Dr. Battle and Natasha all day long, so I love the experiences that they bring to the table and hear their wisdom. I'll just add one little thing. It's, for me, what I see here is it's all around involvement. You know, the more you can get your students involved, because within the classroom, that's their own little community anyways, right? They get that own little sense of community with their instructor and their instructors. So I think it's important that we get them involved. And I mentioned our new employee orientation, and when we're having that session about our why, we also bring in several students to speak. So they sit through, they listen to the why. And, you know, I think it's, and we just did this for the first time a couple of weeks ago. That was a tearful session. We had 60 people, and like I say, we're a large organization. We had 60 people in that cohort, and we had several students come in and speak and give their testimonies. And I think the employees were tearful, and then as they're hearing our why, I think they're getting tearful as far as, wow, these people really care. That's why they're in this business, right? They really, truly care. And that piece of, so I think that's critical. And I'm sure the others, you know, they have their student who sits at the board of trustees. I loved with our student government person, when she does her report out, I always love to hear what they're talking about. They hear all the good things in the board, they take that back. And then one piece that we do in our board that I truly love, and it's really, I tell the chair all the time, no offense, but the highlight of my day is we have a mission moment. That's 15 minutes before the board actually starts. And that's where we bring students in for testimonies to kind of tell them about their journey. And I love that. And I've only been in education for 4 years. Like I said, both my careers been in corporate. I could not get here quick enough. I'll tell you that. I retired from corporate. They convinced me to come out of retirement to come work here, and it's all because of the purpose. And when you hear students speak and give their testimonies, and you hear their stories, you're just compelled. You're just very compelled by that. And I think that's just a wonderful thing. So if you get students involved, they're the best sales reps, and they're the best providers of feedback. Because I think it was Maya Angelou who said, you know, it's not what was said or done, it's how you were treated, is what you remember. Students remember how they're treated. And I think it's critical that we always have that at heart, which I know we do because it's the business we're in. And really, I say business, but it's really it's almost it's a calling, right? It's a calling for most of them, especially the ladies who've been in this business for a long time. It's a calling for those who've committed their careers to this business. But I love the involvement of students. I think that you listen to their voices, no matter how you collect it. You know, you get it through student course evaluations. We do the dialogues. We provide. We have a student voices survey. So we collect all those sort of operational type things. But it's the in-person experience where you're hearing from your students. You know, that's the beauty of it.
That's also such a great ending note for our time together, talking about the way students have expressed their stake, their investment, their interest in all of our development for faculty, development for staff educators, development across the college. It's such a great ending point. I want to thank all of you, Mark, Natasha, Kara, thank you so much for closing out the 5th and final part of this webinar series and talking about the importance of intentionality across the campus. If for no other time I can say these words: leadership, intentionality, purposeful, alignment, culture, space, and celebrating what we know has been impactful is really important to the work that we're doing. Thank you all for the folks who have joined us today. Thank you for folks who will watch this in the future for being engaged at your later date when your schedules allow you. On behalf of the Belk Center, on behalf of my partner in this work, Dr. Chantel Strickland Davis from CPCC, thank you again for joining us this afternoon. We hope the rest of your spring semester is amazing, and stay tuned for upcoming events, both across the system, those events that are happening that the Belk Center sponsors, and also events that are happening inter-college, because you never know how these conversations may spur something. You may see something that you're invited to in the future based upon these conversations. So thank you all again. Have a great Tuesday.